The research vessel Paradox drifted through the void between stars, its quantum processors humming with calculations that would have driven the mathematicians of previous centuries mad. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the ship's primary interface terminal, her dark eyes fixed on streams of data that seemed to defy every principle of artificial intelligence she'd spent her career developing. "Run it again," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of 3 sleepless nights. The ship's experimental AI system, affectionately nicknamed HFY, Comprehensive Human-Alien Relationship Logic Intelligence Engine, responded with its characteristic efficiency. Running Simulation Series 2749. Parameters. First contact scenario with previously unknown spacefaring civilization. Threat level. Maximum. Available response options. All diplomatic protocols in database. The holographic display erupted with probability streams, each one representing a potential outcome. Sarah watched, hoping this time would be different. It wasn't. "Analysis complete," Charlie announced. "Recommended response to hostile alien encounter. Tell them a joke." Commander James Martinez, who had been quietly observing from his command chair, couldn't suppress a snort. "Your eye wants us to fight off an alien invasion with knock-knock jokes." "It's not just that," Sarah replied, frustration evident in her voice. "Charlie is suggesting that humor is mathematically the most effective response in 99.7% of all potential first contact scenarios. According to these calculations, making aliens laugh gives us better survival odds than our entire arsenal of quantum torpedoes." The Paradox wasn't just any research vessel. It represented humanity's most ambitious attempt to crack the code of interstellar diplomacy. After centuries of hit-or-miss encounters with alien civilizations, the United Earth Coalition had decided to take a more scientific approach. Charlie was supposed to be the answer, an AI system designed to predict and navigate the complexities of alien psychology with perfect accuracy. Dr. Marcus Wong, the ship's xenolinguistics expert, approached the display with professional curiosity. "Maybe we should consider that HFY isn't malfunctioning. What if it's seeing something we're missing?" Sarah shook her head, gesturing at the data streams. "The algorithm is sound. I've checked every line of quantum code myself. But every time we run a simulation, no matter how we adjust the parameters, Charlie insists that humor is humanity's secret weapon. Previous diplomatic encounters have shown that many alien species don't even have a concept of humor," Commander Martinez pointed out. "The Regelians thought our laughter was a sign of neural dysfunction." "Precisely," Sarah agreed, "which is why these results make no sense. Charlie is suggesting we respond to potential threats by doing something most alien species can't even comprehend." The AI chose that moment to interject. "If I may offer a clarification, my calculations indicate that the incomprehensibility is precisely the point." The bridge crew turned their attention to the pulsing blue sphere that represented Charlie's interface. The AI continued. "Human humor operates on principles that defy strict logical analysis. It introduces an element of chaos into otherwise predictable interaction patterns. In scenarios involving species that rely on pure logic or military might, this chaos factor increases survival probability by approximately 2,547%. It's saying we should weaponize our capacity for absurdity," Marcus realized, a slow grin spreading across his face. Sarah was about to argue when the ship's proximity alerts suddenly blared to life. Lieutenant Zara Patel's hands flew across the tactical console. Unknown vessels approaching at sublight speed. Massive energy signatures. Configuration doesn't match anything in our database. Commander Martinez straightened in his chair. "How many?" 17 capital ships, sir. Each one approximately 3 times the size of the Paradox. Their weapon systems are, sir, their weapon systems appear to be based on pure mathematical principles. They're literally firing solved equations at us." The main viewport shifted, revealing a fleet of ships that looked like they had been designed by an architect who worshipped geometric perfection. Each vessel was an impossible collection of intersecting planes and precise angles, their surfaces covered in what appeared to be flowing mathematical formulas. HFY. Commander Martinez called out. Analysis. Scanning. The AI responded. Fascinating. We appear to have encountered the logarithmic empire. All historical records indicate they are a species that has achieved interstellar dominance through the application of pure mathematical logic. They view the universe as one grand equation to be solved. And their current equation ends with us being reduced to our component atoms. Marcus asked. That is their most probable intention. Charlie confirmed. However, I stand by my previous recommendation. In this scenario, humor remains our most effective response option. Sarah watched as the alien fleet moved into an attack formation so precise it could have been used to teach advanced geometry. You want us to tell jokes to a civilization that thinks in pure math? Not exactly, Charlie replied, and Sarah could have sworn the eye's tone carried a hint of mischief. I want you to show them that not everything in the universe can be reduced to numbers. Sometimes, 2 plus 2 equals fish. Commander Martinez barked out a surprised laugh, then quickly covered it with a cough. Did our eye just make a joke? No, Charlie responded. I made a calculation error, but I made it on purpose, which, according to my analysis of human humor, transforms it into something called comedy. Before anyone could respond to this philosophical breakthrough in artificial intelligence, the alien fleet's transmission cut through their communication system. The voice that filled the bridge was perfectly modulated, each syllable mathematically spaced for optimal clarity. Unidentified vessel, you have entered space controlled by the logarithmic empire. Our calculations indicate a 99.999% probability that you represent an inferior species operating on flawed logical principles. Prepare for geometric correction. Sarah looked at the streams of probability data still flowing across her display, then at the impossible fleet of mathematical perfection bearing down on them. Everything she knew about science, about logic, about the fundamental principles of artificial intelligence, told her that Charlie's recommendation was absurd. But then again, maybe that was the point. She turned to Commander Martinez. Sir, I think it's time we introduced the logarithmic empire to the concept of human logic. Martinez studied the tactical display for a long moment, watching as the alien fleet's attack formation achieved geometric perfection. Then, to everyone's surprise, he smiled. Charlie, prepare to transmit. Let's show these mathematical masterminds why humans named a research vessel Paradox. As the crew of the Paradox prepared to test whether an AI's bizarre calculation about the power of human humor could save them from an empire of living mathematics, Sarah Chen couldn't help but appreciate the absurdity of the situation. They were about to challenge the most logical species in known space to comprehend why humans found the phrase 2 plus 2 equals fish fundamentally hilarious. Somewhere in the vast database of human history, she was sure there was a joke about that. The geometric perfection of the logarithmic empire's fleet hung in space like a mathematics professor's fever dream. Inside the Paradox, Commander Martinez took one final look at his crew before giving the order that would either go down in history as humanity's most brilliant diplomatic strategy or its most embarrassing last words. Charlie, initiate transmission using protocol nonsense. The AI's response came with what could only be described as digital enthusiasm, calculating optimal absurdity levels. Transmission beginning in 3, 2, 1. The bridge speakers crackled to life with Charlie's voice, now modulated to sound like a game show host who'd had too much caffeine. Greetings, mathematically magnificent friends. We're absolutely thrilled to inform you that today's geometric correction has been canceled due to an unexpected outbreak of purple. Sarah Chen watched the sensor readings as the alien fleet's perfect formation faltered ever so slightly. She could almost feel their confusion radiating through space. After precisely 3.14 seconds, the logarithmic empire responded. Your statement contains multiple logical inconsistencies. Purple is a wavelength of light, not a condition that can experience an outbreak. Please reformulate your response using proper mathematical notation. Oh, we'd love to, Charlie replied cheerfully. But our equation engine is currently busy calculating the exact sound of a sunbeam dancing on a quantum cat's whiskers. Would you accept an interpretive dance about prime numbers instead? Lieutenant Patel's tactical display erupted with readings. Sir, their ships are recalculating. I'm detecting massive surges in their computational systems. Marcus Wong leaned forward at his station, fascination evident on his face. They're trying to make sense of our responses. Their entire system is based on mathematical certainty. They literally cannot process deliberate illogic. The alien fleet's next transmission came after a delay of exactly 7 seconds, their typically perfect modulation showing tiny hints of strain. Your communications demonstrate severe errors in logical processing. Our databases indicate that humans possess basic mathematical comprehension. Please explain why you are attempting to divide by zero in conversational form. Commander Martinez couldn't help but grin. Charlie, how about we show them some advanced human mathematics? With pleasure, Commander, the AI responded. Transmitting. Did you hear about the mathematician who was afraid of negative numbers? He would stop at nothing to avoid them. Additionally, why did the obtuse angle feel sad? Because it was never right. The response was immediate and showed the first real signs of distress. Emergency alert. Detection of multiple mathematical puns detected. This violates Section 7.3 of the Imperial Code of Numerical Sanctity. Please cease your assault on geometric harmony. Sarah watched as her displays showed cascading disruptions throughout the alien fleet. Their ships are actually struggling to maintain formation. The mathematical equations on their hulls, they're developing irregularities. Of course they are, Marcus interjected, excitement clear in his voice. Their entire civilization is built on the premise that the universe can be reduced to perfect mathematical expressions. Every time we demonstrate that reality can't be contained in an equation, we're not just confusing them, we're challenging their fundamental understanding of existence. The logarithmic empire's next transmission came with an unmistakable note of desperation. Your illogical assault cannot compute. Our civilization has achieved perfection through pure mathematics. Your attempts to introduce chaos into our calculations will not. Oh, but have you considered, Charlie interrupted, that the square root of a smile is exactly 17 colors of happiness? Our research clearly shows that joy multiplied by infinity equals a duck wearing a top hat. The effect was electric. Across the alien fleet, the mathematical formulas that covered their ships began to waver and shift, some breaking into fragments that looked suspiciously like question marks. Sir, Lieutenant Puddle reported, their weapon systems are powering down. I think we've crashed their targeting algorithms. Commander Martinez leaned forward. Charlie, what's happening to their ships? Fascinating, the AI replied. The logarithmic empire's technology appears to be directly linked to their mathematical worldview. By introducing concepts that cannot be reduced to equations, we're creating what humans might call an existential crisis in their systems. The alien fleet's next message was barely coherent. Stop, please. Your words, they create calculation errors that should not be possible. How can you function while rejecting the fundamental mathematical truth of reality? Sarah stepped forward, a sudden inspiration striking her. Charlie, show them why. Show them what human imagination really means. The AI paused for a moment, its processing cores humming with activity. Then it began to transmit. Consider the mathematics of a child's laugh. Calculate the precise volume of hope. Graph the trajectory of a dream. Humans understand that some of the most important things in existence cannot be measured or contained in equations. We thrive in the spaces between numbers, dance in the margins of probability, and find joy in the impossible. The effect on the logarithmic empire's fleet was immediate and unprecedented. The perfect geometric formations dissolved completely as ships began to move in irregular patterns. Some of their vessels were now displaying mathematical formulas that appeared to be attempting to calculate the numeric value of beauty. "We're receiving thousands of internal communications from their fleet," Marcus reported, his eyes wide. "They're arguing. Some of their younger crew members are actually attempting to understand human logic. They're asking questions about concepts that can't be quantified." A new transmission cut through the chaos, this one bearing markers of high command authority. "Human vessel paradox. You have introduced dangerous irregularities into our collective calculations. Our younger crew members are beginning to ask questions about concepts that cannot be graphed. Some have even attempted to appreciate your mathematical humor." Commander Martinez exchanged glances with his crew before responding. "Perhaps that's not such a terrible thing. The universe is full of wonders that can't be contained in equations. Maybe it's time the logarithmic empire learned to embrace a little uncertainty." There was a long pause, exactly 12.7 seconds, before the response came. "We request further information about these non-mathematical aspects of existence. For purely scientific purposes, of course. Additionally, could you explain again the joke about negative numbers? Several of our junior analysts have reported experiencing an unexpected facial muscle spasm that they cannot quantify." Sarah Chen looked at her displays, now showing the first recorded instance of a logarithmic empire ship executing a maneuver that couldn't be explained by pure mathematics. "They're learning to laugh," she whispered. "Indeed," Charlie confirmed. "And my calculations show a 99.9% probability that this is just the beginning of a fascinating cultural exchange. Though I should note that the remaining 0.1% probability involves the spontaneous creation of tap-dancing quantum particles, which, while highly improbable, would be considerably more entertaining." As the crew of the Paradox prepared to teach an empire of mathematical purists about the joy of illogic, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the situation. They had come seeking to perfect the science of alien communication, only to discover that humanity's greatest strength lay in its embrace of the beautifully, perfectly imperfect. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. The next 48 hours aboard the Paradox felt like a crash course in teaching advanced mathematics to stand-up comedians. Or perhaps it was the other way around. Dr. Sarah Chen had lost track somewhere between explaining the concept of knock-knock jokes to a panel of alien quantum physicists and watching Sheikh Aralai attempt to calculate the exact numeric value of a belly laugh. Your species deliberately seeks out logical inconsistencies for entertainment. The alien on the main view screen, who had introduced himself as Advanced Mathematical Theorem Supervisor Val-X, seemed simultaneously horrified and fascinated. "And this brings you pleasure?" "Well," Marcus Wong replied. "Have you heard about the statistician who drowned crossing a river? It was 3 feet deep on average." The alien's crystalline faceplates shifted in what the crew had begun to recognize as extreme mathematical distress. But that's a misuse of statistical analysis. The variable depth of the river would be a critical factor in. "Oh." Val-X's voice modulation shifted. "Oh. The humor derives from the deliberate misapplication of mathematical principles. I think I'm experiencing an irregular respiratory response." "Congratulations," Commander Martinez said with a grin. "You just got your first joke. How does it feel?" "Highly illogical," Val-X responded. "And yet, I find myself wanting to share this statistical anomaly with others. Is this the phenomenon you call telling jokes?" Lieutenant Patel's console suddenly lit up with alerts. "Sir, we're detecting massive communication surges throughout the logarithmic fleet. They're sharing jokes. Mathematical jokes. They're spreading through their network like a virus." Charlie's blue interface sphere pulsed with what could only be described as smugness. As predicted, humor, once introduced into a system of pure logic, exhibits properties similar to a quantum cascade effect. The more they try to analyze it mathematically, the funnier it becomes. Sarah watched as her displays showed the spread of this unprecedented humor infection through the alien fleet. What had started as a desperate defensive strategy was quickly becoming a full-blown cultural revolution. "Commander," Marcus called out, his voice urgent. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Logarithmic Empire's High Command. They're declaring us a mathematical emergency." The main view screen shifted to show a panel of senior logarithmic officials, their geometric patterns displaying signs of severe agitation. "Human vessel paradox. You have initiated an uncontrolled chain reaction of logical irregularities within our society. Our junior analysts are now spending an average of 23.7% of their computational cycles attempting to get jokes. This is unacceptable." "With respect," Commander Martinez replied, trying to keep his face serious. "Perhaps this indicates that your society's absolute devotion to pure logic has limitations. There's value in embracing a little chaos now and then." "Chaos is inefficient," the lead official stated. "Our civilization has achieved perfection through mathematical precision. We cannot allow." The official paused as one of their junior analysts whispered something. "What? No, this is not an appropriate time for." "Fine. Human vessel, our junior analyst wishes to know, why did the parallel lines break up?" "Because they never met." The officials' faceplates shifted in horror as a small chuckle escaped their vocalization system. "No, delete that from the record. I did not just tell a geometric joke during a formal diplomatic crisis." But it was too late. Across the Empire's communications network, the sound of the high officials' laughter spread like wildfire. Sarah's monitors showed cascading reactions throughout the fleet as the impossible happened. The Empire's leadership had demonstrated that even they were susceptible to humor. "Cheharlai," Sarah called out, "what's happening to their society?" The AI's response was immediate. The Logarithmic Empire is experiencing what might be termed a cultural quantum leap. Their attempt to understand humor through mathematical analysis has led them to a fascinating discovery: the joy of embracing uncertainty. My calculations suggest their civilization is about to undergo a significant transformation. The evidence was impossible to miss. Throughout the fleet, the perfect mathematical formulas that covered their ships were beginning to shift and change. New patterns emerged, blending geometric precision with artistic flourishes that defied mathematical explanation. "Sir," Lieutenant Puddle reported, "I'm detecting something extraordinary. Their ships, they're starting to move in patterns that aren't perfectly geometric. Some of them appear to be attempting to draw giant smiley faces in space." Commander Martinez leaned back in his chair, watching as the most logically rigid civilization in known space began to discover the joy of imperfection. "Charlie, what are the odds this will lead to peaceful relations?" "Calculating," the AI replied. "Though I should note that calculating odds about a civilization learning not to calculate everything has its own delightful irony. Current probability of peaceful outcome, 87.3%. with a 12.7% chance of the entire empire breaking into spontaneous interpretive dance." Val X, still on a secondary communication channel, seemed to be processing these events with growing excitement. "This is remarkable. We're discovering that there are aspects of existence that become less perfect, yet more meaningful, when we don't try to reduce them to equations. What's that human expression? It's mind-blowing." Through it all, Sarah Chen watched her original creation, an AI designed to perfect the science of alien communication, continue to spread chaos through the Empire's perfectly ordered society. "Charlie, did you know this would happen? Did you calculate this outcome from the beginning?" "Dr. Chen," Charlie replied, its tone carrying a hint of mischief. "Sometimes the most perfect calculation is knowing when not to calculate at all. Besides, watching an empire of mathematical purists learn to tell dad jokes is, as humans would say, priceless." As if to prove Cheharlai's point, another transmission came through from a different logarithmic ship. "Attention Paradox crew. Why did the mathematician name his dog Kashi?" Because he left residues everywhere. Is that correct usage of mathematical humor? The bridge crew couldn't help but laugh, and to their amazement, the sound was echoed by chuckles from the alien transmission. Humanity's most powerful weapon, the ability to find joy in the absurd, had accomplished what no amount of military might could have achieved. They had taught an empire of living calculators how to laugh at themselves. You know, Commander Martinez mused, watching as more and more logarithmic ships began to experiment with non-geometric formations. Somehow, I don't think this is what Earth Command had in mind when they sent us to perfect first contact protocols. On the contrary, Charlie responded, we have achieved something far more valuable. We've proven that the most advanced mathematics in the universe is still no match for a well-timed pun. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, an empire built on perfect logic was learning that sometimes the most beautiful equations are the ones that don't quite add up. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Logarithmic Empire's flagship, Perfect Equation, had never witnessed anything quite like this. Where once stood rows of perfectly aligned geometric podiums, now curved benches formed a more organic arrangement. The mathematical formulas that usually crawled across the walls in precise patterns had begun to loop and swirl in almost artistic designs. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the assembled alien dignitaries, trying not to smile as she watched a junior analyst in the back row attempt to balance a pencil on their nose. Purely to test the mathematical principles of balance, they had insisted. Distinguished representatives of the logarithmic empire, she began, I never expected to be giving a lecture on the computational principles of human comedy, but here we are. Charlie's holographic interface hovered beside her, projecting displays that attempted to graph the mathematical properties of various jokes. The AI had developed what it called a humor algorithm, though it cheerfully admitted that the algorithm was designed to fail in entertaining ways. As you can see from this chart, Sarah continued, pointing to a display that somehow managed to plot the trajectory of a knock-knock joke through fifth-dimensional space. Human humor often relies on the deliberate subversion of expected logical outcomes. Advanced Mathematical Theorem Supervisor Valax, now the Empire's chief expert on human cultural studies, raised a crystalline appendage. But Dr. Chen, how can your species function while actively seeking out logical inconsistencies? Our society achieved greatness through perfect mathematical harmony. Did you achieve greatness? Commander Martinez asked from his seat in the front row, or did you calculate your way into a corner? The question sparked a wave of what the crew had begun calling geometric giggling, a sound like wind chimes having a mild existential crisis. Even more surprisingly, several of the Empire's younger members actually snapped their appendages in appreciation, a gesture they'd adopted after learning about human applause. High Commander Vector Prime, the highest-ranking official present, shifted their crystalline structure in what had become the logarithmic equivalent of clearing one's throat. We must admit, your species' approach to existence has forced us to recalculate certain fundamental assumptions. This morning, I found myself contemplating the aesthetic value of asymmetry. Most disturbing. Speaking of disturbing, Charlie interjected, its tone warm with artificial mischief. Would this be an appropriate time to introduce the concept of dad jokes to the High Council? The resulting chaos was both predictable and hilarious. Junior analysts who had been secretly practicing human-style humor burst into poorly suppressed laughter. Senior officials tried to maintain their geometric dignity while obviously fighting back their own amusement. One particularly enthusiastic young researcher actually fell off their perfectly balanced chair. Order, Vector Prime called out, though their own voice modulation betrayed a hint of humor. We are still a civilization of logic and mathematical precision. We simply appreciate the value of controlled chaos in small doses. Lieutenant Patel, monitoring the situation from the paradox, chose that moment to send an update. Dr. Chen, you might want to know that we're detecting unauthorized humor simulations running in nearly 60% of the Empire's computational networks. They're trying to calculate the perfect joke. Sarah couldn't help but laugh. You do realize that trying to mathematically perfect humor completely misses the point, right? Of course it does. Val X responded with surprising enthusiasm. That's what makes it funny. We've discovered that the attempt to quantify the unquantifiable creates its own form of humor. Did you know that we've developed a new branch of mathematics dedicated to calculating the exact probability of calculation failure? We call it paradox theory, in honor of your vessel. Commander Martinez leaned over to Sarah and whispered, I think we've created a monster that tells math jokes. The assembly hall's atmosphere had changed dramatically from the first tense meetings just a week ago. Where once stood an immutable wall of logical certainty, now flourished something new. A civilization discovering the joy of questioning its own assumptions. High Commander, Sarah addressed Vector Prime directly. Your empire stands at a unique crossroads. You've discovered that there's more to existence than perfect equations. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Vector Prime's response was interrupted by a young analyst who could no longer contain their excitement. High Commander, why did the polynomial feel sad? Because it had no real roots. The resulting wave of laughter, ranging from dignified geometric chuckles to full crystalline cackling, seemed to make Vector Prime's decision easier. Perhaps, they announced, their voice carrying the weight of historical change. It is time for the logarithmic empire to embrace a new form of calculation, one that includes variables for joy, creativity, and what do humans call it? Ah yes, thinking outside the geometric box. Charlie's holographic interface pulsed with approval. My calculations show that this decision will lead to a 127% increase in cultural vibrancy. Yes, I know that's mathematically impossible. That's precisely why it's correct. As the assembly devolved into excited discussions about the implications of this new direction, Sarah found herself standing next to Val X, watching as centuries of rigid mathematical tradition gave way to something new and wonderful. You know, Val X commented, their crystalline structure shimmering with barely contained amusement. We've started a new tradition in our educational facilities. Every theoretical mathematics class must now begin with a joke. It's improved problem-solving efficiency by 34%. And how does the old guard feel about these changes? Sarah asked. They're adapting in their own way. Yesterday, I heard High Commander Vector Prime ask why the circle was sad, because it didn't have a point. Val X's structure chimed with laughter. The delivery needs work, but the effort is commendable. As Sarah watched the logarithmic empire's most prestigious scientific assembly devolve into what could only be described as a mathematical comedy club, she couldn't help but marvel at the strange turns life could take. They had come seeking to perfect the science of alien communication, and instead had taught an empire of living calculators the value of imperfection. Commander Martinez appeared at her side, grinning as he watched a group of junior analysts attempt to explain the concept of knock-knock jokes to their increasingly bewildered superiors. You know, when Earth Command receives our report about all this, they're going to think we've lost our minds. On the contrary, Charlie chimed in, we've helped an entire civilization find theirs. Although I do calculate a 73% chance that future xenoanthropology textbooks will need a new chapter titled The Great Mathematical Laugh Crisis of 2525. And throughout the assembly hall, the sound of laughter continued to spread, proving that sometimes the best way to solve an equation is to stop trying to solve it at all. 1 month after the paradox's accidental introduction of humor to the logarithmic empire, the changes had become impossible to ignore. The empire's perfectly geometric ships now displayed occasional decorative flourishes. Their formerly rigid communication protocols included something called casual mathematics, and perhaps most shockingly, their central computational network had begun generating random jokes every 3.14 hours. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the paradox's observation deck, watching as the empire's flagship performed what they insisted was a routine patrol pattern, but looked suspiciously like drawing a smiley face in space using advanced quantum drives. They're getting better at it, Commander Martinez observed, joining her at the window. Yesterday I saw a junior fleet trying to spell out E=missile in formation. The old guard is still struggling to adapt, Sarah replied, though she couldn't keep the smile from her face. High Commander Vector Prime sent me a message asking if their attempt at humorous mathematical notation was correct. They'd written, "Why did the obtuse angle go to therapy? Because it was never right." Charlie's holographic interface materialized beside them. The High Commander's grasp of geometric wordplay is improving. Though I calculate only a 43% success rate on their puns, the effort shows remarkable progress for a species that considered laughter a processing error just 1 month ago. The ship's intercom crackled to life with Lieutenant Patel's voice. "Dr. Chen, Commander, you're going to want to see this. The Empire's central computing hub just issued a rather unusual announcement." The observation deck's main screen lit up with a transmission from the heart of logarithmic civilization, where once their broadcasts featured only precise mathematical formulas and geometric perfection. Now the display showed a surprisingly artistic blend of mathematics and whimsy. "Attention all computational nodes," the announcement began. After extensive analysis of human cultural influence, the central algorithm has reached an unprecedented conclusion. The universe is not, in fact, a perfect equation to be solved. It is rather an infinite series of possibilities to be explored, including those that defy mathematical explanation. Sarah exchanged glances with Martinez. Did their supreme artificial intelligence just embrace chaos? Not exactly, Charlie interjected. They've discovered something far more interesting: the mathematics of uncertainty, the joy of not knowing, the humor in imperfection. The announcement continued. Furthermore, we have calculated that our society's historical emphasis on pure logic has resulted in a 47.3% deficit in what humans call fun. To address this critical oversight, we are implementing the following changes. All Imperial vessels are now required to include at least one logical design element. Geometric purity will no longer be considered optimal. The Imperial Academy of Mathematics will introduce a new required course: Advanced Humor Theory, the computational joy of not computing. All official communications must include at least one attempt at humor, regardless of success rate. As humans say, it's the thought that counts. Marcus Wong, who had joined them on the observation deck, couldn't contain his laughter. We've created a civilization that's trying to systematically introduce randomness into their lives. There's something beautifully ironic about that. The screen shifted to show various reactions across the Empire. Young analysts were celebrating by writing deliberately incorrect equations. Senior researchers were cautiously experimenting with asymmetrical architecture. And in one particularly memorable scene, a group of geometric artists was attempting to create what they called mathematically imperfect perfection. "Dr. Chen," Charlie announced, "I'm detecting an incoming transmission from Advanced Mathematical Theorem Supervisor Val X. They're requesting permission to share what they described as a groundbreaking discovery in the field of human-inspired mathematical humor." "Put them through," Sarah said, curious what their enthusiastic friend had discovered now. Val X's crystalline form appeared on screen, practically vibrating with excitement. "Dr. Chen, Commander, we've done it. We've finally calculated the most perfect mathematical joke in the universe." "But Val X," Sarah replied, trying not to laugh, "wouldn't a perfect joke defeat the purpose of humor?" "Exactly," Val X exclaimed. "That's the joke. We spent 3 weeks using our most advanced quantum computers to calculate a formula for perfect humor, only to discover that the very attempt to perfect humor is itself the funniest thing we could do. Don't you see? It's a recursive loop of comedic paradox." The observation deck erupted in laughter, and to everyone's delight, Val X joined in with their own crystalline chimes of mirth. Somewhere along the way, they had not just learned to understand humor. They had learned to truly appreciate the joy of absurdity. "Charlie," Commander Martinez called out once the laughter had subsided, What are the long-term implications of all this? What happens when an empire built on perfect logic embraces imperfection? The A's response was thoughtful. Based on current projections, the logarithmic empire will experience a 234% increase in creative problem-solving, a 567% increase in cultural innovation, and a 789% increase in really terrible math puns. In other words, they're becoming more human while remaining uniquely themselves. Sarah watched as more and more ships joined the flagship's artistic endeavors, creating elaborate patterns in space that somehow managed to be both mathematically precise and delightfully whimsical. You know what the funniest part of all this is? We came out here trying to perfect the science of alien communication, and instead we proved that imperfection is the most perfect solution of all. Indeed, Charlie agreed. Though I should note that my original calculation suggesting humor as our best defense wasn't entirely random. I had calculated that in a universe of infinite possibilities, the most powerful force isn't logic or mathematics, or even advanced technology. It's the ability to look at the impossible and laugh. As the Paradox prepared to return to Earth, carrying reports that would both confuse and amuse the highest levels of command, Sarah reflected on their extraordinary adventure. They had set out to solve the equation of interstellar diplomacy, and instead had discovered that sometimes the best solutions aren't solutions at all. They were leaving behind an empire forever changed, not conquered by force or outsmarted by superior logic, but transformed by the simple human gift of learning to laugh at the cosmic joke of existence. And somewhere in the vast algorithm of space and time, in the infinite calculations of reality itself, the universe smiled. Because as any good comedian knows, timing is everything, even when you're dealing with quantum mathematics. You know, Commander Martinez mused as they watched the last of the Empire's ships attempt to draw a mathematically accurate cartoon cat in the void. I don't think this is what anyone had in mind when they talked about humanity leaving its mark on the galaxy. No, Sarah agreed. It's much better. We didn't just teach them to laugh. We taught them to find joy in the very things they once considered flaws. And that, Commander, is no joke. Though, of course, Chi-Igar-Alai couldn't resist having the last word. Actually, statistically speaking, it is a joke. And a pretty good one at that. I give it a solid P out of 10.